6 essential vitamins to keep your legs strong in old age, even at 94. Have you ever looked at someone in their 90s still walking strong and steady, full of life, independence, and confidence, and wondered, how do they do it? Most people assume leg weakness is just an unavoidable part of aging, but what if that's not entirely true? What if your legs don't have to give out on you? What if the secret to keeping them strong, stable, and pain-free is something simple, something you can start doing today? Many older adults feel their legs getting weaker, their steps becoming uncertain, climbing stairs feels harder, standing for long periods becomes exhausting. But here's the truth. Your body is sending you signals, and you can do something about it. In this video, I'll reveal 6 essential vitamins that don't just support muscle function, they supercharge your legs by improving circulation, reducing inflammation, and enhancing mobility. But here's what most people miss. There's one vitamin often overlooked that makes the biggest impact. And you'll only find out what it is at the end of this video. So stick with me, because what you'll discover today could be the simple daily habit that keeps your legs strong for life. Vitamin D. They say the strength of a tree is not measured by its height but by the depth of its roots. Plato once wrote, "The part can never be well unless the whole is well." And so it is with our bodies, especially our legs. A house built on a weak foundation will eventually crumble, and yet so many of us wait until we feel our legs trembling before we take notice. We dismiss the signs, weakness, fatigue, the subtle ache that creeps in at the end of the day, as nothing more than getting older. But that's not entirely true, is it? A great oak does not fall in a single storm. It weakens over time unnoticed, until one day, the roots no longer hold. I once knew a man named Henry, a strong-willed fellow who prided himself on never needing help. At 74, he still worked on his old truck and still took his morning walks, but little by little things began to change. First, he started using the railing when climbing stairs. Then he stopped going to the park as often. One evening, he sat down with me and sighed. "I don't know what's happening. My legs don't feel like they used to." His voice carried something deeper than frustration. It was fear. The fear of losing control. The fear of watching his independence slip away. And isn't that the quiet terror so many of us face? The truth is, it wasn't just age, it was neglect. Years of avoiding the sun, years of dismissing his body's silent pleas for nourishment. Henry, like so many others, didn't realize that weakness isn't just something that happens. It's something that creeps in when we stop giving our bodies what they need. Vitamin D, the very essence of sunlight, was slipping away from him, leaving his bones brittle, his muscles weaker, and his steps unsteady. Science tells us that over 40% of seniors in the U.S. are deficient in vitamin D, and yet, few recognize the impact until it's too late. It isn't just about bones, it's about the ability to stand tall, to walk without fear, to move through life with confidence. I remember the day Henry took my advice. Just a small change, a bit of sun in the morning, a spoonful of cod liver oil each day. It didn't happen overnight, but after a while he started feeling different, more steady, fewer cramps in the middle of the night. And that was when I saw it. That glimmer of hope, that belief, that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't losing himself after all. Because in the end, strength isn't just about muscle. It's about the will to keep going, to keep feeding the body what it needs, to refuse to let time steal what can still be preserved. What about you? Have you ever ignored the quiet warnings your body has given you? Have you seen a loved one struggle with the slow loss of independence? I would love to hear your thoughts. Let's talk in the comments, because sometimes the smallest conversation can be the start of a life-changing realization. 2. Vitamin B12. The old Cherokee chief once told his grandson, "There is a battle between two wolves inside us all. One is evil, it is weakness, fear, and surrender. The other is good, it is strength, endurance, and resilience." The boy asked, "Which wolf wins?" The chief replied, "The one you feed." And isn't that the truth? Strength, whether in the body or the spirit, is a matter of what we nourish. If we do not give our bodies what they need, weakness takes over. It is not just age that slows us down. It is neglect, the years of silent depletion that we do not notice until it is too late. I once knew a woman named Margaret, a retired schoolteacher, proud and full of wisdom. She had spent her life standing before classrooms, shaping young minds, walking miles through the halls of a school she loved. But in her 70s, something changed. Her legs felt heavy, like they belonged to someone else. She would rise from a chair and feel dizzy, her steps uncertain. And then came the tingling, the unsettling sensation that something inside her body was no longer responding the way it once did. The doctors ran their tests and checked her heart, her blood pressure, and her bones. But the answer was simple and overlooked. A deficiency. A slow, creeping loss of something as vital as air. Vitamin B12. Margaret had always been a careful eater, but she never thought about B12. She had cut back on red meat over the years, avoided dairy, and never knew that after 50, the body becomes less efficient at absorbing B12 from food. No one had warned her that without it, her nervous system would weaken, her muscles would grow tired, and her balance would falter. She didn't know that nearly 20% of adults over 60 are deficient in B12, and that even a slight deficiency could lead to weakness, memory fog, and instability. It was as if her own body was quietly unplugging itself, cell by cell. But here's the beautiful thing about the body. It remembers how to heal when we give it what it needs. Margaret made a simple change. She added 1 tablespoon of nutritional yeast a day, a habit so small she barely noticed it at first. But slowly, her body did. The tingling faded. Her legs felt lighter. She no longer had to grip the railing every time she stood up. It wasn't magic, it was biology. The truth that strength is not just about willpower, but about feeding the right. So I ask you, have you ever felt your body whispering to you, telling you something is missing? Have you ignored it, believing it was just another part of aging? Let's talk about it. Share your thoughts in the comments, because sometimes the answer is simpler than we think. It's just a matter of knowing what to give our bodies before it's too late. 3. Vitamin C. The great Stoic philosopher Seneca once wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." And yet, in our later years, it is not only the mind that must be fortified, but also the very foundation upon which we stand. Our joints, our ligaments, the hidden fibers that keep us moving, they are the silent keepers of our independence. Yet, like the bridge that rusts from neglect, the body too will falter when deprived of what it needs. Strength is not just in the will to walk, but in the unseen forces that make walking possible. I once knew a man named Walter, a retired carpenter whose hands had built homes, shaped wood, and carried the weight of a lifetime's work. His legs had always been strong, his knees sturdy, his steps sure. But time has a way of testing us. It began with stiffness in the morning, a quiet ache in his joints that made standing up feel like a task rather than a reflex. Then came the pain, subtle at first, creeping into his knees, his wrists, and his fingers. The strength that had once held up walls was struggling to hold up his own body. "Getting old," he muttered, rubbing his knee as if to bargain with it. But it wasn't just time. It was something deeper, something his body had been missing for years without him realizing. Walter had spent decades eating the way he always had, never thinking much of it. He believed in hearty meals, meat, potatoes, bread. But he paid little attention to the quiet work of vitamins, the hidden elements that repair what life wears down. He never realized that without vitamin C, the very collagen that held his joints together was slowly deteriorating. The old carpenter, who had spent his life reinforcing beams and sealing cracks, had never thought to do the same for his own body. The science is clear. Vitamin C is not just for immunity. It is the very foundation of joint strength, flexibility, and recovery. Without it, ligaments weaken, joints stiffen, and movement becomes a battle rather than a freedom. When Walter finally listened, it was not to a doctor but to his own reflection, an image of a man who once carried the world but now hesitated at the bottom of a staircase. He made a small change, one he barely thought would matter. A spoonful of acerola cherry powder each morning, a handful of strawberries in his breakfast. Nothing drastic, just a quiet shift. But the body remembers, and soon, so did he. His joints no longer argued with him every morning. His steps no longer carried the weight of discomfort. The pain that had once anchored him was no longer in control. It wasn't youth he had regained, it was mobility, confidence, the ability to live without hesitation. Have you ever ignored the slow changes in your body, dismissing them as just another part of aging? Have you ever looked back and wished you had taken action sooner? Let's talk. Sometimes, the smallest habit can be the difference between struggling and thriving. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. 4. Vitamin K2. The great American philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "Adopt the pace of nature. Her secret is patience." But in today's world, we often forget that patience is not just about waiting. It's about building, about strengthening, about making sure the foundation is solid before we expect anything to stand tall. And the same is true for our bodies. Strength doesn't come from the surface, it comes from what's beneath it, our bones, the silent pillars that carry us through life. But what happens when those pillars weaken? What happens when we think we're doing everything right, only to realize we've been missing a key piece all along? I once knew a woman named Eleanor, a proud and independent spirit, the kind of person who never let anyone see her struggle. She had raised 3 children on her own, worked 2 jobs, and never once asked for help. But then, at 68, something happened that she never expected. She fell. It wasn't a dramatic fall, just a simple misstep, a moment of imbalance on her front porch steps. But the damage was done. A fractured hip, months of recovery, and a painful realization that her bones were not what they once were. Eleanor had always believed she was taking care of herself. She drank her milk, took her calcium supplements, and never missed a daily walk. But no one had ever told her that calcium alone isn't enough. No one had warned her that without vitamin K2, the calcium she was so diligent about was doing more harm than good, building up not in her bones but in the wrong places, in her arteries and joints, making her stiff, making her weaker instead of stronger. And she wasn't alone. Research shows that many adults unknowingly suffer from calcium misplacement, leading to brittle bones and hardened arteries instead of the strength they had hoped for. It wasn't until her doctor mentioned vitamin K2 that Eleanor finally understood. She didn't need more calcium, she needed a way to send it where it belonged. A small change, 1 tablespoon of grass-fed butter or ghee each day, a simple habit that seemed too easy to matter. But the body knows what to do when given the right tools. Over time, she felt the difference, not just in her bones, but in the way she moved, the way her legs no longer felt stiff when she stood up, and the way she felt more stable, more herself. Sometimes strength isn't about pushing harder, it's about knowing where to build. And so I ask you, have you ever thought you were doing everything right, only to realize you were missing something essential? Let's talk in the comments. Sometimes, one small shift can change everything. 5. Magnesium. The old Greek physician Hippocrates once said, "Healing is a matter of time, but it is sometimes also a matter of opportunity." The body does not always cry out in ways we expect, it whispers first. A restless night, a heaviness in the legs, a cramp that wakes you from sleep like a sudden storm. We dismiss these things as minor annoyances, thinking little of them, until one day, the weakness creeps in. The stairs feel steeper, the morning stiffness lingers longer, the energy we once had seems to drain faster than before. We chalk it up to aging, but what if the body is simply calling for something it has been missing? I knew a man named Richard, a retired firefighter, who had spent his life running into danger while others ran away. He was strong, fearless, and built like the men of old who did not break easily. But in his 70s something began to change. His legs, once sturdy as tree trunks, began to betray him. They felt heavy, as if carrying him took more effort than it should. He found himself waking up at night with sharp cramps in his calves, gripping the edge of the bed, waiting for the pain to pass. Walking, something that had once felt effortless, now required thought. "I just don't have the energy anymore," he told me one day, rubbing his knee with a kind of frustration only a strong man feels when his body no longer listens to him. The doctors ran tests. His heart was strong, his bones were intact, no disease, no major red flags. But then one doctor asked a simple question, "What's your magnesium like?" Richard blinked. He had never thought about it. Like most people, he knew about calcium, about protein, about iron. But magnesium? It had never crossed his mind. And yet, magnesium is what allows muscles to contract and release properly, what keeps circulation flowing, and what ensures oxygen reaches where it is needed most. Without it, muscles tighten, nerves misfire, and fatigue settles in like an unwanted guest. Nearly half of older adults are deficient in magnesium, yet few realize the effect until their body starts breaking down, piece by piece. Richard made one small change. 1 tablespoon of pumpkin seeds a day, a habit so minor it seemed almost silly. But within weeks, the cramps eased. His legs no longer felt like lead weights. He walked longer without needing to rest. He even slept better, no longer jolted awake by spasms in the night. It wasn't youth he had reclaimed, but something just as important: ease, comfort, the feeling of being in control of his own body again. Have you ever ignored the quiet signals your body has given you, only to realize later they were warnings? Have you ever wondered if something small, something overlooked, might be holding you back? Let's talk in the comments. Sometimes all it takes is one simple shift to feel like yourself again. 6. Vitamin E. The old Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu once said, "Water is fluid, soft, and yielding, but water will wear away rock which is rigid and cannot yield." As a rule, whatever is fluid, soft, and yielding will overcome whatever is rigid and hard. The same is true for life, and the same is true for our bodies. Strength does not always mean force, it means movement, circulation, the ability for blood to flow freely, and for oxygen to reach every part of us. Without that, even the strongest legs grow weak, heavy, and tired. I once knew a man named Joseph, a quiet but hard-working man who had spent most of his life as a machinist. He was always moving, always working with his hands, fixing things, making things last. But when he retired, something changed. His legs, once steady and reliable, began to feel heavy. A strange coldness crept into his feet, no matter how warm the day was. He noticed swelling in his ankles, a discomfort that made even short walks feel like a chore. "I used to walk miles without thinking," he told me one afternoon, his voice lined with frustration. "Now I can barely make it to the mailbox before I need to sit down." Joseph thought it was just age catching up with him, but what he didn't realize was that his body was struggling with something deeper: poor circulation. Without proper blood flow, the legs do not receive enough oxygen, the muscles fatigue faster, and swelling becomes a daily burden. And the culprit? A quiet, overlooked deficiency in vitamin E, one of the key nutrients that keeps blood vessels open and flexible. Without it, the body's highways of circulation become slow and rigid, like an old machine struggling to function. Joseph had spent his whole life fixing things, but he had never thought to fix this. When he learned about vitamin E, he started small, just 1 tablespoon of wheat germ oil daily, a habit so minor he barely noticed it at first, but his body did. Over time, the swelling eased. His legs no longer felt like dead weight. That cold feeling that had once crept into his feet disappeared. His walks grew longer. He no longer had to sit down halfway to the mailbox. "It's like my legs woke up," he told me, a quiet smile on his face. And that's exactly it. Circulation is life. It keeps us moving, keeps us strong, and keeps us alive in ways we don't always see. So tell me, have you ever felt your body slowing down in ways you can't quite explain? Have you ever dismissed fatigue, heaviness, or discomfort as just aging, without asking what your body might be missing? Let's talk in the comments. Sometimes the simplest fix makes all the difference. Now that we've uncovered the 6 essential vitamins for stronger, more resilient legs, take a moment to reflect. Have you been giving your body what it truly needs? Strength isn't just about movement, it's about nourishment. About making sure every step you take is backed by the right support. Small changes like a spoonful of cod liver oil, a sprinkle of nutritional yeast, or a daily habit of pumpkin seeds can make all the difference. Your body is always listening. What message are you sending it? If you found this helpful, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Which of these habits will you try first? Drop a comment below, and if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. A stronger tomorrow starts with the choices we make today. Stay well, stay steady, and I'll see you in the next video.